we are up against a autocratic tyrant who has absolutely no concern for collateral damage or civilian casualties, and I'm sure wouldn't think twice about firing a missile, nuclear or conventional, at London cities and at UK critical national infrastructure. I mean, there are a whole host of reasons. Disasters usually happen when a number of events go wrong or don't go in the direction you expect. And I think at the moment, people are getting concerned. The first thing I'd say, though, is that, that's 25 years since they were last reviewed. That is probably way too long. These things need to be turned over fairly quickly. One of the key additions to the latest contingency plan is the cyber threat, which didn't really exist 25 years ago. So that needs to be very much updated. But I think also the world is a very, very different place at the moment. The world has even changed in the last 100 days that President Trump has been in control. The world is changing very rapidly at the moment. And I think a particular concern is what is happening in Ukraine and what's happening in Moscow. We have the 80-year anniversary of VE Day coming up on Thursday, but also last weekend we had the 25-year anniversary of President Putin being in power in Moscow. And he was involved in a documentary that was published on Russian TV at the weekend. And he said some pretty concerning things that have got people rattled. And I think the first element to it is he says he hopes he doesn't have to use nuclear weapons to subjugate Ukraine. He says his plans for Ukraine are exactly as they were on the 24th of February 2022. He wants to take complete control of Ukraine. Now, he says he hopes he doesn't have to use these weapons, but then you look at what's happening on the ground. Analysts have reported in the last 7 days, actually the Russians made virtually no progress over the last 12 months. Even they lost a whole batch of the Kursk Oblast, which they then retook, but we're reporting really just this week that Ukraine has invaded into Kursk again. It's also against a backdrop that reports in the last 7 days that the casualties Russia has accumulated are approaching 1 million. And it's very clear that Russia is finding it difficult to find new people to plug into this gap. The last time they made any ground in Kursk was with 10,000 North Korean sort of mercenaries, if you like. Now they have all gone or are dead. So the Russian army is struggling. The next element of concern is in Russian newspapers over the last couple of days, there's been talk about the economic crash about to hit Russia. And this is mainly based on the oil price. OPEC has decided to increase oil production. Saudi Arabia says it wants to drive the oil price below $50 a barrel. If that happens, Russia is going to lose maybe a third or more of its external revenue from oil, which is how it keeps its war machine running. And Russian commentators are saying, the price of utility bills is going to go up by 40% in the next couple of years. And Russians are going to struggle to put their heating on and even struggle to buy food. So this is creating internal turmoil as well. And they won't be able to afford to make new tanks. So when you put all that together, and you listen to what Putin said at the weekend, one conclusion you could come to is actually the only way that Putin is going to possibly achieve his aims in Ukraine is to use tactical nuclear weapons. Now, I think we've discussed this before, and Russia has threatened nuclear attack almost since day one, and I have spoken to you and other journalists saying that this is all bluff and bluster. However, I think this time we do need to take it very seriously because of all the scenarios that we've looked at. And when Putin looked west on the 24th of February 2022, he didn't see a conventional deterrence to stop him. He now looks west, and we have a nuclear imbalance, if you like. The nuclear mutually assured destruction scenario is not in equilibrium. And I say this because President Trump is very much stepping the Americans back from Europe. Britain and France do have a nuclear capability, but it's way smaller than the Russians, and it doesn't include tactical or battlefield nuclear weapons. One of the assumptions coming out of the intelligence services is that Putin thinks he can use a small tactical nuclear weapon and get away with it, because Britain or France wouldn't use a strategic, massive nuclear weapon in response. So that is why I think people are concerned about the threat and raising it up. And it seems that Britain is very much, in the foresight of Putin's derision, and we are the ones likely to be attacked first. So there is a concern, and I think we're also expecting the Strategic Defence Review to hit the streets very soon, which is a review of our military and defensive and security capability that we require in order to face down the threats. And again, when Putin looks west at the moment, one thing he will notice, and it's been reported in the open press, that things like air defense, everybody knows about the Iron Dome and Iron Shields and what Ukraine now has. A view in the Telegraph today is that if Russia attacked Britain as it attacked Ukraine on the 24th of February 2022, we'd be in real trouble, because we don't have air defense over cities. Also, critical national infrastructure. There's a concern that our 5 active nuclear power stations will be a target, our gas terminals, and everything else. So it's a realization that the situation and the threats have changed. And also it's a realization that people, forewarned is forearmed. It's a fine balance between reassuring people and terrifying people. And when I was a young guy during the Cold War, these sort of defense scenarios were, you were taught it in school, you saw it on the telly, but really for the last 30 years or so, we've discarded it. It's now viewed that we need to review it. And I suppose the final piece on this, it goes back to my deterrence perspective. If Putin thinks that actually Britain is well prepared, and anything he does in this nature will be wasted, then he's less likely to do it. So I know it alarms people and shocks people. Europe, if it works together, is immensely powerful, not just economically, but also militarily, especially with the new NATO members of Sweden and Finland. And I think that's a real concern. And I expect Putin thinks that Britain is pretty key to this. Maybe Britain is the head of the European snake, if you like. And if they can cut our head off, then Europe will not disintegrate, but will not pose a major threat to Russia. It's historical, and I know lots of people are, particularly in the far left of this country, are suggesting that this is not the sort of thing we should do. But actually, I think when one looks at it, particularly in Europe, you need strong leadership, and Britain and France are providing that. And also we have, our military strategic planning and thinking, our diplomatic strategic and planning and thinking are as good as any in the world. And it would appear that the Prime Minister is very keen to lead this. So, yeah, I think that's why the Russians are focusing on us, because actually we are being belligerent at last. And Putin doesn't like no men, if you like. He likes people to say yes to him. So that is it. I might say, the final bit to this, we would be the most difficult country in Europe for him to attack, not least because we're the furthest away. And although we might not have sophisticated air defense systems, we've got, a pretty capable air force. And that distance between Russia and here, those, without going into precise detail, but it takes quite a time for a missile to be fired from Russia to hit the UK. And in that time, there is a chance to intercept it. So I think that people in Britain should not be over concerned about this rhetoric, because, the way that Putin works, he is more likely to attack what I'd call the low-hanging fruit, much easier for him to attack Ukraine or those countries like Poland and Finland on his borders than try and sort of lob a missile right over them into the UK. So I think, with that basis, we're in a good position to sort of lead the defence, as it were. but we must not forget our own people. And that's where these civil contingency plans are so important, that they're reviewed, that they're fit for purpose for today's threats.